Oh, sorry, I accidentally dropped your laptop in the pool, my brother. Best Reddit stories. Oh, sorry, I accidentally dropped your laptop in the pool. My brother smirked until he learned what was on it. Oh, sorry, I accidentally dropped your laptop in the pool. My brother smirked until he learned what was on it. After destroying my laptop over a $20,000 refusal, he woke up at 6:15 a.m. to locked accounts, canceled access, and consequences he never expected. My name's Adam. I'm 29 and I've always been the responsible one in my family. I'm the guy who never asked for a cent after I turned 18. Worked my way through college, built a decent career in IT consulting, and managed to save enough for a comfortable life. My younger brother Ryan is the complete opposite. He's 26, still lives with our parents, has bounced between at least a dozen jobs, and somehow always has a brand new gadget, expensive shoes, or the latest phone. Whenever anyone asks how he affords it, he just shrugs and says, "I've got connections." What he really has is a never-ending stream of money from mom and dad. And when that runs dry, he turns to me. Ryan and I have never been particularly close, mostly because every conversation eventually turns into him asking for money. The latest one started 2 weeks ago. He called me in the middle of the day, completely unbothered by the fact that I was in a client meeting. "Bro, I need 20 grand, he said, like he was asking to borrow a pencil. I actually laughed at first because I thought it was a joke, but he was serious. Dead serious. Apparently, he wanted to invest in some can't-miss business venture with a friend. The last time he had a can't-miss opportunity, it ended with him trying to sell designer sunglasses out of the trunk of his car. I told him no immediately. I didn't have the patience to hear another one of his half-baked schemes, and even if I did, I wasn't about to hand over that kind of money. That no did not go over well. He got quiet, too quiet, then said, "Wow, I thought you were family," and hung up. That was Ryan's way of guilt-tripping me. In the past, that line would eventually be followed by mom calling me saying things like, "He's your brother Adam. You should help him out just this once." Except just this once had happened 6 or 7 times already. Sure enough, a few hours later, mom called. She didn't even say hello before launching into it. "Ryan told me you refused to help him. He's trying to better his life, Adam." I told her I wasn't funding his latest get-rich fantasy. She sighed dramatically and said, "You've always been selfish." The next day, I decided to stop by my parents' place after work because I had left some documents in the study when I was helping Dad set up a new printer last week. Ryan was there sprawled out on the couch like he owned the place, watching TV on full volume while scrolling on his phone. We barely said 2 words to each other. I grabbed my folder and was about to leave when I realized I'd left my work laptop charging in the guest room the night before. That laptop was my livelihood, custom setup, expensive hardware, all my client files, and years' worth of work. I went to grab it, and just as I was unplugging it, Ryan appeared in the doorway. He leaned against the frame, smirking, and said, "Still not going to help me out?" I didn't even look up. Nope. I wish I could say what happened next was an accident, but it was too deliberate. Ryan walked past me, picked up my laptop by the edge with one hand, and before I could react, he strolled to the backyard and without hesitation, dropped it straight into the pool. I froze. The splash echoed in my ears and my stomach sank like a rock. I managed to get out. "Are you insane?" But he just shrugged and said, "Oh, sorry, guess my hand slipped." The casual tone in his voice was infuriating. My parents came outside after hearing me yell, and before I could explain, Ryan threw up his hands and said, "It was an accident." What made my blood boil was my dad's response. He didn't ask if the laptop could be saved. He didn't ask if I had backups or how much it cost. He just looked at me and said, "Adam, calm down. It's just an accident. It's only a laptop, only a laptop." That laptop was worth more than Ryan's car. And it wasn't just the cost, it was the work, the trust my clients put in me, the deadlines. I stood there dripping pool water from the ruined machine, staring at the people who were supposed to be my family, and realized they didn't care. Not really. Ryan chuckled, clearly enjoying himself. "Guess you should have helped me when you had the chance." My dad didn't even scold him. My mom just rolled her eyes and muttered something about boys being boys. I wanted to explode, but instead I just went quiet. I've learned that when people like my family see you angry, it only fuels them. I set the ruined laptop on the patio table and said nothing. That seemed to make Ryan uncomfortable. He expected me to yell or threaten him, but I just gave him a tight smile, grabbed my car keys, and left. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the moment in my head. Ryan's smirk, Dad's dismissive tone, Mom's indifference. I could feel something shifting inside me. Normally, I'd just distance myself, maybe cut off contact for a while, but this time felt different. This wasn't just about money or disrespect. This was about crossing a line. And Ryan, he didn't even realize what he had done. He thought it was over. It wasn't. By the time the clock hit midnight, I had already made a few calls and changed a few passwords. Small steps, just the beginning. But at 6:15 a.m. the next morning, Ryan woke up to something he never saw coming. When I say Ryan woke up to something unexpected, I don't mean he woke up to a bang or a scream. It was quieter than that. Subtle, but enough to spark the first flicker of panic in him. He called me at 6:18 a.m., his voice tight with confusion. "Hey, my Netflix isn't working. Did you change the password?" I almost laughed. My voice stayed calm. "Yeah, Ryan. Along with the Amazon account, the Hulu account, the shared Apple Music subscription, and the Xbox Live login. You don't pay for them, so you don't get to use them anymore." He was silent for a second before spitting out, "Wow, petty much," and hanging up. I thought that would be the end of it for the morning, but by 9 a.m., Mom was on the phone. "Adam, I just got off the phone with Ryan. He said, you're punishing him over a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding, that was her word for intentionally destroying a $4,000 laptop. She kept talking before I could even respond. "You know your brother needs those accounts. He doesn't have the money to pay for them himself." I reminded her that he also didn't have the money to replace my laptop, but that point slid right past her. "You're older, Adam. You should be setting an example, not holding grudges." I started realizing just how deep this favoritism ran. To my parents, Ryan was the baby who could do no wrong. If he made a mistake, it was my job to fix it, or at least overlook it. If I made a mistake well in their eyes, I never got the chance to make one, because they'd already decided I was the cold one. Mom finished the call with her usual, "We're family, Adam. You don't turn your back on family." I hung up without answering because honestly, I was afraid if I opened my mouth, I'd say something I couldn't take back. Later that afternoon, I had to stop by the house again, this time to pick up some tools I had lent Dad. I debated not going at all, but I didn't want my things mysteriously disappearing. As soon as I walked in, I could feel the tension. Ryan was in the kitchen with Mom, both of them laughing at something on his phone. When they saw me, Ryan put on this exaggerated frown. "Careful, everyone," he said loudly. "Don't get near Adam's stuff or he'll lock you out of your own accounts." Mom chuckled like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. I ignored it and asked Dad for my toolbox. He grumbled something about learning to let things go before finally getting it for me. But Ryan wasn't done. As I was leaving, he followed me to the driveway. "You know, you could just give me the 20 grand and we'd be even," he said with a smug grin. My hands tightened around the handle of the toolbox. "Even," I repeated, my voice low. "Ryan, you destroyed my laptop." He shrugged. "Yeah, but you're rich, Adam. You'll replace it in a week. Me, I'm trying to start something here. A real business. You could actually help instead of making everything about you." The fact that he genuinely believed this twisted logic made my blood run cold. That night, it got worse. Around 11 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. It was a screenshot of a group chat. My parents, Ryan, and a few of our extended relatives. Ryan had written, "Adam's throwing a tantrum because I accidentally broke his computer. He's locking me out of everything and refusing to help the family. Guess money really changes people." The worst part, the responses were siding with him. "Wow, Adam's always been like that," one aunt wrote. "Doesn't surprise me." Another chimed in. Not a single person asked for my side of the story. It was in that moment I realized I wasn't just dealing with Ryan. I was dealing with a whole system that enabled him, one that had been in place for years. And if I was going to do something about it, I need to be smart, calm, methodical, patient, because Ryan was about to learn that when I decide to play the game, I play to win. What he didn't know was that my few calls from the night before were already setting things in motion. 2 days later, I found out just how far Ryan was willing to go. I was in the middle of a client meeting when my phone started buzzing repeatedly. First, it was a couple of missed calls from my bank. Then came the email subject line, "Unusual activity detected." My stomach dropped. I excused myself, stepped into the hallway, and opened the message. It was a fraud alert. Someone had tried to initiate a $9,500 wire transfer from my personal checking account to an account under the name Ryan M. My hands were trembling when I called the bank. They confirmed what I already suspected. The transfer request had been made online using my correct login credentials. I'd always kept my banking information private. My passwords were long and unique. But then I remembered my laptop, the one Ryan dropped into the pool. It wasn't just the physical loss that hurt, it was the fact that my passwords had been saved on it. Even though the hard drive had water damage, someone with enough motivation could pull data from it. And Ryan, as careless as he was, had a friend who fixed electronics. I didn't have direct proof yet, but I knew this wasn't just him messing with streaming accounts or making me look bad to the family. This was him trying to take my actual money. I told the bank to freeze my accounts immediately, and while they handled that, I sent Ryan a text. "Call me now." He didn't respond. Instead, an hour later, I got another call, this time from my mom. "You need to stop accusing your brother of things," she said without even saying hello. I was stunned. Wait, so he already told you Mom's voice hardened. He said you froze your accounts just to make it look like he stole from you. That's manipulative, Adam. You know he'd never do something like that. I wanted to scream. My own mother was defending him before I'd even explained what happened. Mom, the bank has his name on the attempted transfer, I said slowly, as if she might actually process it. She didn't. People make mistakes when they're desperate. Maybe if you'd helped him with his business, he wouldn't be in this position. That was the moment something in me snapped. For years, I tolerated being painted as the cold, selfish one, while Ryan got away with anything. But now he had crossed a line there was no coming back from. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was theft and attempt to rip away something I had worked for my entire adult life. And my parents had made it clear, no matter what he did, they'd stand behind him. The final blow came that evening. I went to grab some mail from my apartment's lobby, and tucked inside one of the envelopes was a notice from my credit card company. It was a confirmation for an additional authorized user being added to my account, the name Ryan M. He hadn't just tried to take money, he was trying to make himself a permanent leech on my finances. And he'd done it without even pretending to ask. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I could feel the betrayal settling deep in my chest. Not hot, not loud, but cold like ice. That night, sitting in my dimly lit living room, I stopped thinking of Ryan as my brother. He was just another problem to solve. And I already knew that when I solved it, it would be in a way he'd never forget. What he didn't realize was that I had a lot more than frozen accounts and password changes at my disposal, and he'd just given me the perfect reason to use all of it. The days that followed were some of the lowest I felt in years. Not because of the money, but because of the realization that I was truly alone in my family. The fallout from Ryan's smear campaign hit harder than I expected. Word spread through the extended family, and I started getting texts that made my blood boil. My uncle messaged me, "If you're really accusing your own brother of stealing, you need help." My cousin sent, "We all know you've always looked down on Ryan. This is low even for you." It didn't matter that I had proof. No one wanted to hear it. In their eyes, I was the villain, cold calculating and too successful for my own good. At work, things weren't much better. The destroyed laptop had set me back on deadlines. And while I'd salvaged some files from backups, there were projects that needed to be rebuilt from scratch. I found myself working late into the night, barely sleeping, eating takeout over my keyboard. Every time my phone busted, I braced for another message, either from the bank about more attempted charges, or from a family member telling me what a terrible person I was. I thought maybe a face-to-face with my parents could fix things, but when I stopped by their house, I didn't even make it past the front door. Dad stood in the entryway, arms crossed. "We don't appreciate the way you're treating your brother," he said flatly. "Until you apologize, I think it's best you stay away for a while." I stared at him, waiting for some hint that he was bluffing, but there was nothing in his expression except disappointment at me, not Ryan. Behind him, I could hear Ryan in the living room laughing at something on TV. Walking back to my car that day felt like walking out of my own life. The people I thought would always have my back had chosen their side, and it wasn't mine. That night, I sat on my couch in my dark apartment staring at my phone screen as Ryan's name lit it up. I didn't answer. Then came the voicemail and laughing saying, "You should have just given me the money, bro. Would have saved you all this trouble." Something about hearing that broke the last thread holding me back. The frustration, the anger, the humiliation. I stopped fighting it. Instead, I let it settle because anger burns fast and hot. But if you let it cool, it turns into something far more dangerous. Patience. The next morning, I stopped reacting. I didn't respond to texts. I didn't answer calls. I didn't try to defend myself to family. I went completely silent. To them, it probably looked like I'd given up, like they'd won. And in a way, I let them think that. I kept my head down, worked through my projects, and started quietly tying up loose ends. I closed old accounts, moved funds to places Ryan couldn't touch, and called in a few favors from people outside the family. The kind of people Ryan wouldn't even know existed. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Walking away wasn't enough. Ryan would keep taking as long as there was something to take. My parents would keep enabling him as long as they believed he was harmless. They needed to see what he really was, and he needed to feel the weight of every selfish choice he'd made. And as much as they'd like to think otherwise, I had far more control over Ryan's life than he realized. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to use it. That moment was coming sooner than he thought. It's funny how when you stop wasting energy defending yourself to people who don't want the truth, you suddenly have so much left over to build something better. The first thing I did was upgrade everything. I replaced my ruined laptop with a top-tier workstation, one I had been eyeing for months, but kept putting off because it felt too much. Not this time. I doubled my security, invested in encrypted backups, and subscribed to services that made my workflow bulletproof. The same week, I landed a new contract with a tech firm overseas. It was bigger than any project I'd handled before, and the retainer alone covered the cost of the laptop twice over. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ryan had tried to sabotage me, and all he'd done was push me into a higher gear. Money started flowing in faster than I could have predicted. I streamlined my processes, hired a freelance assistant, and freed up more of my time for strategic work instead of constant firefighting. With the extra breathing room, I started saying yes to opportunities one would have ignored before. Guests speaking at conferences, consulting for startups, even appearing on a tech podcast. My name was getting around and my rates went up. But success wasn't just financial. I started reconnecting with people outside the toxic family bubble. Old friends, professional contacts, even a few extended relatives who'd quietly reached out to say they didn't buy into Ryan's story. I kept those conversations light, never venting about my family, just showing them I was doing well. It wasn't about proving a point. Not yet. It was about planting seeds. Meanwhile, I was paying attention. From a distance, I kept tabs on Ryan. I learned his business venture was already falling apart. Shocker. And that he'd been leaning even harder on my parents for cash. I also found out he'd made the mistake of bragging to his friends about putting me in my place by ruining my laptop and locking me into family drama. What he didn't realize was that a couple of those friends weren't as loyal as he thought. One of them, someone I vaguely knew from years back, sent me screenshots of conversations that Ryan would regret ever having. Between those messages, the bank records from the attempted transfer, and a few other pieces I'd collected quietly, I was starting to build something, a case not necessarily a legal one, at least not yet, but a blueprint for dismantling his little empire of excuses. The beauty of it was that he had no idea I was watching, listening, and stacking the cards in my favor. By the time spring rolled around, I wasn't just back on my feet. I was miles ahead of where I'd been before. My business was thriving, my network was expanding, and I was in a position where I could make moves without anyone seeing them coming. And the best part? I kept my silence. No fights, no warnings, no clues for Ryan or my parents that anything was brewing. Because when I finally decided to make my move, I didn't want them to just feel the shift. I wanted them to wonder how it happened so fast, and they were about to find out. The real turning point came one evening when I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years, Mr. Carson, a family friend who also happened to be the vice president of a mid-sized investment firm in the city. I bumped into him at a networking dinner for tech professionals. We caught up over coffee afterward, and somewhere between casual conversation and business talk, Ryan's name came up. Turns out, Mr. Carson's firm had recently been approached by none other than Ryan and his business partner for funding. The pitch was laughable. No real business plan, unrealistic profit margins, and a clear lack of experience. But the most interesting part, Ryan had listed me as a silent backer in his proposal. My jaw nearly hit the table. Mr. Carson showed me a copy of the proposal on his phone, and there it was in black and white, existing backing from Adam MYT Consultant. My credentials, my reputation being used to prop up Ryan's nonsense without my permission. And worse, he'd attached my LinkedIn profile to it. If anyone in the investment world took that seriously, my name could be tied to a failing scheme I had nothing to do with. That was the moment I knew I had all the leverage I needed. I told Mr. Carson the truth, him for the heads up, and asked him to forward me a copy of the entire proposal. He did, along with an email thread showing Ryan bragging about how my involvement would make investors trust him. With that, the puzzle was complete. I had bank records of his attempted wire transfer, the unauthorized credit card addition in his name, screenshots of him bragging about ruining my laptop, evidence of him misusing my professional reputation for his fake business. On their own, any of these could cause trouble for Ryan. Together, they could burn down every bridge he had left. But I wasn't just thinking about exposing him. I wanted to control the narrative. If I timed this right, I could make sure that when Ryan's downfall came, it wouldn't look like revenge. It would look like the natural consequence of his own arrogance. And if I played it even smarter, I could make sure my parents saw the truth without me ever having to say, "I told you so." To set the stage, I began reaching out to a few key people, mutual acquaintances, colleagues of my parents, even some relatives who had influence in the local community, all under the guise of professional catch-ups. I dropped small casual mentions about hearing Ryan was working on some big project and hoping it turns out legitimate. I wasn't accusing, I was planting doubt. At the same time, I spoke to a lawyer friend about what could be done if someone used my name without my consent in a financial proposal. Let's just say his response gave me a lot of ideas and even more confidence. By the end of that month, I had positioned myself exactly where I wanted to be, secure in my career, armed with irrefutable proof of Ryan's schemes and surrounded by people who were beginning to question the golden boy image my parents had built around him. The board was set, the pieces were in place, and Ryan had no idea the game had already started. It began with a single email. I forwarded Ryan's entire fraudulent business proposal, the one with my name plastered all over it, to my lawyer friend. He drafted a formal cease and desist letter, making it crystal clear that using my identity for financial gain without my consent was not only unethical, but could carry legal consequences. The letter was delivered directly to Ryan's email, his business partner's inbox, and just for good measure, CC to my parents. I didn't call him. I didn't explain. I let the silence speak. Within hours, my phone lit up with messages from Ryan. First came the fake outrage, "You're ruining everything." Then the guilt trip, "I thought you wanted me to do better." And finally, the threats, "You'll regret this when I make it big." I ignored every single one. My lawyer assured me that silence would rattle him more than any response. 2 days later, I made my second move. I sent the same proposal and evidence of his misuse of my name to every investor Ryan had approached. I didn't editorialize, didn't insult him, just attached the documents with a short message. "This is to clarify that I have no involvement in this venture and do not endorse it in any way. Professional, clean, bulletproof." By the end of the week, Ryan's business partner had dropped him. Investors had ghosted him, and the whispers started spreading through the same network my parents loved to brag in. The golden boy had cracks in his armor, and people were starting to notice. But I wasn't done. The third move was my favorite. I compiled the bank records of his attempted wire transfer, the unauthorized credit card edition, and the screenshots of him bragging about ruining my laptop. I packaged them neatly into a secure PDF titled "For Your Records" and sent it to my parents with a short note. I thought you should see the whole story. No response needed. That one landed harder than I expected. Dad didn't reply. Mom sent one message, just 2 words: "We'll talk." I didn't. Finally, I pulled the quietest, most devastating string of all. Remember those friends of Ryan's who weren't as loyal as he thought? I tipped one of them off about a freelance contract I'd recently landed with a high-paying client, the same type of work Ryan had been pretending to specialize in. Word got back to him that I'd secured a deal worth more than his business venture ever could have made. And because I'd been so public about my recent successes without bragging just enough for him to see he knew I wasn't just fine, I was thriving without him in spite of him. The beauty of it all was that I never raised my voice, never posted a single angry word online, never accused him in public. I just turned on the lights and let everyone see exactly who he was. And the fallout. Well, it was only just beginning. The real collapse happened faster than I expected. A week after I sent my parents the file, I got a call from my aunt, the same one who chimed in on that family group chat saying she wasn't surprised by my behavior. Her tone was different now. Careful. She told me she'd spoken to my mother and that things at the house are tense. Apparently, my dad had gone through the PDF I'd sent line by line, checking the bank statements, the credit card authorization form, and the messages Ryan had sent bragging about destroying my laptop. By the end, there was no room for excuses. It was all in Ryan's own words, in his own handwriting, with his own signature. That night, Ryan came home to find my parents waiting for him in the living room. Dad confronted him, demanding an explanation. From what I was told, Ryan tried to spin the same tired lines. "It was an accident. I didn't mean it. Adam's making it look worse than it is." But for the first time in his life, Mom and Dad didn't bite. Dad told him to pack his things and leave. No more handouts, no more just this once. The story spread quickly. Those same relatives who had been so quick to believe him now knew the truth. And the silence from their end was deafening. Friends stopped taking his calls. His so-called business contacts cut him off. Even his connections for quick cash started ghosting him. The golden boy image was shattered, and all that was left was Ryan broke, unemployed, and exposed. The last time I saw him was 3 weeks later. I was leaving a coffee shop when I spotted him across the street wearing the same wrinkled hoodie he used to wear around the house, shoulders slumped, staring at his phone. He looked smaller somehow, not just physically, but like the air had gone out of him. Our eyes met for a second. He didn't smirk this time. He didn't say a word. He just looked away and walked off. I didn't feel triumph exactly. It was something quieter, steadier, a deep, unshakable satisfaction that justice had been served without me lowering myself to his level. I'd given him every chance to stop, to grow up, to respect boundaries. He chose not to, and in the end, he had destroyed himself with nothing more than his own greed and arrogance. As for my parents, they've been keeping their distance. We exchange polite messages on holidays, but the endless lectures about helping family have stopped. I think they finally understand that enabling Ryan wasn't helping him. It was just protecting him from consequences he desperately needed to face. And me, my business is stronger than ever. My life is peaceful, and my boundaries are rock solid. Because if there's one thing this whole mess taught me, it's this. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destroying someone.